All right, I'm with Harris, the founder of Talk Hiring. Harris, how you doing today?
I am good. How are you, Andrew?
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I'm excited to learn more about Talk Hiring and your story. But for those that may not know you, do you want to give a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. So, very brief intro. I kind of like the story of how I got into entrepreneurship is in high school, was really obsessed with Apple and Steve Jobs, and I thought that meant I wanted to, learn how to build iPhones and study electrical engineering. So that's what I studied in college. But then I found this. We called it a live-in incubator, called Incube, and to live there, you had to be building a business. So it was 18 kids, like super entrepreneurially motivated. And that's where I figured out that it wasn't really electrical engineering that was my passion, but it was entrepreneurship. Built a few businesses. The most successful one was a taxi sharing and taxi booking app, kind of like Uber Pool, called Koala Cab. Best part of it was the slogan: "Before you call a cab, koala cab." But
Nice.
now no one calls a cab. And then yeah, I worked as an engineer at a few different startups after school. One called Game Changer, now owned by Dick's Sporting Goods, and another one called X.AI, um, an AI personal assistant. And then yeah, ended up starting Talk Hiring about 6 years ago.
Nice. Tell me about Talk Hiring. What made you get the idea?
Um, well, the honest truth is like the we called it Talk Hiring because we were not trying to build what we ended up building, although the name also fit for what we ended up building.
Hmm.
Um, we were trying to build a voice-based job application, so a way for people to talk about themselves instead of writing about themselves, to apply for jobs. Still think that's a great product, but I would walk around these job fairs trying to sell it to employers. And like we sold it to 10 employers, but it was, really tough. And it didn't feel like this was the right kind of product. Um, but at these job fairs, there are always job training programs and other like government programs trying to, upskill and train people. And they were always way more interested in this mock interviewing tool or the product as a mock interviewing tool. So then one December break, I just reconfigured it into a mock interviewing tool to see would this resonate more. And it felt a lot more natural and aligned. And I really liked working in the niche of like career readiness and workforce development.
Nice.
So yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
I like that. How did you get
hmm
the first customers for Talk Hiring?
First customers, it's, guerrilla warfare. You're just like out
Hmm.
there. Did some mock interview days as a volunteer, went to job fairs, cold emails, asked people if they could introduce me to people. I also had, before I started Talk Hiring, I was volunteering for a little over a year at a nonprofit in Brooklyn and the Bronx called the Hope Program. So they were really helpful at, helping me figure out how to build this product and what they needed and introducing me to other orgs. So that kind of stuff, but nothing like, nothing pretty in the early days.
Nice. I like
Yeah.
what you just said, how you were building with an organization to, I assume, learn the problem firsthand and you're building the solution with an organization. Did that help you
Right.
find product market fit? Would you recommend that to others?
For sure. But we also, like, they were one of our probably 10 or 15 design partners. So we started off giving away for free as like a free beta. And as a condition of using this thing for free, you had to meet with me every week. So I got a
Oh,
lot of feedback
that's
on
smart. I like that.
how to make this thing good. But it was tough in the early days to figure out what do these organizations care about in terms of like the success of the product. Because everyone, some people wanted to see more students landing jobs, and others wanted to see just like pure usage, and others wanted to see like do students actually like this thing, and yeah, it took a while to like hunt for the right success criteria.
That's really smart. I like how you phrase that. Was there a moment when you really felt you found product market fit, or maybe you can think back and I don't know, you were in your
Yeah.
house or with a customer and you're like, man, I'm really onto something here.
Yeah, there were when you're in the earliest days, like you can definitely you can do things and like feel like you're making progress, but it never really feels like you're making progress until you just see like a blast of usage or a big customer signing up or something like that. And I felt the initial signs of product market fit when so we built this product for adult job training programs, people trying to go from like cashier positions and into like medical assistant positions or whatever the job transition is. But I posted the link to the tool in some Facebook groups. And then out of the blue, we started getting a bunch of high schools using it and like high school teachers rolling it out in their schools. So that full of the product, especially when like a large district just called me up and wanted to purchase it, even though it was honestly not that good of a product yet, was
Hmm.
a real feeling that we had some signs of product market fit. Not full yet, but the initial signs.
Nice. What would I
Hmm
should have asked this at the beginning of the podcast, but how would you describe what TalkNotes does? Or excuse me, Talk
Uh,
Hiring.
yeah, so talk hiring. So as a company, we have two products. We have an automated mock interview tool, like a job interview prep tool that we sell to schools and governments and job training programs, which are often nonprofits, focused on accessibility, tech accessibility, as well as industries don't require college degrees, just making the product super simple and easy to use. And then we also have another product vertical around like job searching and earning incentives. But yeah, we really focused on the niche of career readiness organizations because they were very underserved as a market and a good, business to build off of.
Nice. So
Hmm
things are going well. You have customers, product market fit. What made
hmm
you want to sell the business?
I mean, I forget exactly the year, but a few years ago, I considered selling the business because I was considering raising money for the job searching tool and thought like I can't be running two product lines at the same time. So I priced it way too high, did not get enough
Mm.
interest. But then this time around, I decided to legitimately sell the business for a bunch of reasons. Like personally, I just had a child, so that is just like a big personal change and tough to deal with the stress and the long hours. And I just felt like as I was, I mean, he's 6 months old as of this weekend, but like in the early days of having a child, it sucks that you're thinking about as you're holding in like all the crap that you have to code up or like all the emails that you have to write,
Uh-huh.
and it just like doesn't feel right. Um, and I had been running it for a while, like I was about 6 years in. The job search product that I'd been working on had basically like the business fundamentals of the product changed. And so I was just ready for like a new start. I'd also just moved to Atlanta, so a lot of reasons. But the mock interviewing tool especially was like a healthy multi-year profitable business that I knew I could get a good return on and find the right partner for.
Nice. I love that reason. I'm a
Hmm
dad too, so I can relate.
Yeah.
He's turning 5 in about a month, so
Okay.
a little older than yours.
Yeah, but it's tough when you're I don't know. I
Yeah.
remember we were, I think, a week and a half after he was born, like we had a huge outage, and so it's just, I don't know. It sucked, like trying to keep both babies alive at the same time.
Yeah, kids are hard. It's a full-time job is how I like to think of
Hmm
it.
Right.
Tell me about your experience with acquisitions. Had you ever sold a company before? Was this your first time going through a formal process?
Yeah, this was my first time doing it. I actually really enjoyed the process, like a lot more than I thought I would. Um, it's, I mean, I definitely enjoyed it because of Acquire.com. If I was just like going out cold emailing people or something like that, it would not have been a fun process.
Right.
But the fact that potential buyers were just like coming to my door every day, I was having a bunch of meetings. Um, yeah, just meeting a lot of people, it's flattering when a lot of people want to buy the thing that you worked on for so long. Um, Trying to understand people's motives and why they want to buy this thing and like what kind of wacky deal terms they might try to come up with to screw
Hmm.
you over, negotiating with them. But Acquire.com is great. It's just, yeah, it's a time. I think if it had, fallen through, then I might not have liked the process.
Right. I can understand that.
But even before like the deal was actually closed, it was an enjoyable process.
That's awesome to hear. Who'd you work with on
Yeah.
the team?
Emily.
Emily? How did she
Yeah.
help you through the acquisition process?
Um, she helped me a lot of ways. So, she helped me. We met in the beginning, like probably every week, figuring out how to write up the public facing blurb to not give too much away, but make it intriguing enough, figuring out how to price it. Um, there's also a point when you're in an acquisition process where you have a bunch of people interested, but no one's going to jump until someone else jumps and like gives you an offer or
Yep.
like there's some deadline. So she helped me figure out how to get over that hump, and how to set a deadline and how to push everyone to the deadline. And um, for the um, for the diligence process, which is probably the scariest part for the person selling the business, figuring out what documents we need, like how to structure the diligence process to not have this thing fall through, and then transitioning everything over is a surprisingly big lift to like move all the SaaS apps over and
Mm.
onboard the tech team and tell all the customers and meet with all the customers. And yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot, but she was really helpful.
That's awesome. That's why we're there, during that process, because the first time going through an acquisition, it can be a little stressful. And if you get one
Hmm.
thing wrong, sometimes that can derail the whole acquisition. Was
Right.
there was there any parts that you found really stressful, or was it enjoyable the whole way for you?
No, it was definitely not enjoyable the whole way. So it was definitely stressful in it's tough because you have this company that's completely illiquid and um unlike certain assets that someone's probably going to buy for a business, like there's a much smaller group of people who would potentially buy it. And so we're able to get a bunch of offers. We had 7 different offers that we were considering, but it was tough to vet all of them. And like some of them were public companies, some of them were private startups, some of them were like individuals, some of them were search funds. Um, and so figuring out like who's most likely to close, how can I get screwed over in this deal? Like if some had ridiculous earnout processes or um, illiquid stock purchasing that like who knows what's going to happen to that, or working capital requirements can really screw you over. Cut
Yeah.
your deal. So there are a lot of ways. But then at the very end, so I ended up selling I decided to sell to an individual, like a search fund, essentially, instead of a company or an existing small or large company, just because I felt like the risk of it getting taken in a different direction was lower. The risk of like the board deciding one day that they don't want to buy this thing is lower. But it almost fell apart because he had raised some capital and then the terms on the capital changed,
No,
because
no.
he had like gotten the loan a few months earlier and then and so it was stressful. It
Yeah.
could have definitely fallen through. Loans are not fun, but I knew that going in. It's just yet another risk going into it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did Emily help you in any way select the winning buyer? Did she help
Um,
decipher what these deal terms were or what could go
yeah,
wrong with the other buyers?
for sure. She was really helpful, as well as I had a few other mentors who had sold businesses help me with that. But what she was, obviously the least risky deal on paper is all cash up front.
Yep.
But it's hard to get, a fully all cash up front. There's no risk to that kind of a deal. Um, Offer because often someone needs to like raise some money to do that. So yeah, she was really helpful at number one, helping me negotiate up a lot of the offers by just telling them these are the kinds of deals I'm accepting or I'm considering. If you can increase um your fee in the first 3 months, then like maybe I'll consider it or whatever. And then on the process of um on the diligence process, like I've never done that before. So she told me exactly what docs I need to have ready. And so I was fully ready for diligence probably 2 weeks before I signed the LOI. Um, but I think the scariest part of the whole process is like once you sign the LOI, now the buyer has all the power. And like if they back out, now you have to go back to the other buyers and
Yeah.
who knows. So I talked to her about having some like breakup clause in the LOI, but I don't know. It ended up feeling not right, then it wouldn't be significant enough. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's a
it's
tough game.
true. It's true. Picking the right winning buyer is so important, especially you have 7 offers like you did. That's a lot. So well done on that. Because if you pick the wrong one, you're right, it can fall through. Then you go
Right.
back to the other buyers, but then you're in a position of weakness at that point. Not like super bad, but it's definitely not as
Hmm.
strong as you originally are when you have 7 buyers, you haven't picked the offer. So good job picking the right buyer based on what you felt was the best option for you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. It's always tempting to look at the offers and, if all goes well, there were offers that would have earned me a lot more money, but I'm
It's
not going to
true.
be running the business anymore, so I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm glad
Yeah.
it all worked out. Um,
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. If you could,
Hmm.
go back in time and give yourself, 3 pieces of advice when you're selling the business. So you go back to the starting line based on everything you
Hmm.
went through and everything you learned. What's like the top 3 biggest learnings?
Well, the number one learning that I had, which I think a lot of business owners forget, it's very simple to remember, but is so hard to pull off, is if you run a business and it has at least 3 consecutive prior years of profit and like, let's say 6 figures of profit, not like a very small amount, that's what buyers want. So like, there are a lot of companies that have had a lot of profit, but they're pretty new or they've been around for a while and they don't have that much profit. But if you want to like build a startup or a company to sell it, um, it seems like 3 is sort of like the magical number where people are confident that this is a business that isn't going to go away anytime soon.
That's great advice. Based on the 1,000+ acquisitions I've seen, I would completely agree. Because when you have
Right.
3 years, you have some durability in the business. It's not
Right.
like a SaaS AI company, which are great
Hmm.
buys, and we see a lot of those acquisitions, but they're so new. There's a constant question of, is this going to be around in a year? And so you'll
Right.
typically see a valuation ding with businesses like that or products like that. But
Hmm.
same business, same product. If you keep it for 3 years and run it, and you run it profitably and smart, um, yes, you will see a lot of buyers that are looking to buy a business
Right.
like that at good valuations as well.
Hmm. Yeah, so that was a learning. Like, I'm glad I didn't sell the business a few years ago because we wouldn't have had that. And yeah, it just would have been tougher to sell. Another one around like revenue concentration risk. Buyers are always, not always, but generally wary about if you have like a certain percentage of your customers or a certain percentage of your revenue comes from a small percentage of customers. It's tough to avoid that though, as a company. Like there's probably some, even if it's not like revenue concentration risk, maybe you have some like distribution concentration risk.
Yep.
Um, but if you're building a business, it's good to think about if you're building a business and you want to sell it or just run it because you are taking a risk. Like um, thinking about how to reduce that risk is surprisingly important when you're selling it. Like pretty much every potential buyer was very wanted to understand like what percentage of our revenue came from what percentage of the customers.
No,
Um,
that's great advice. Again, what you
yeah.
want to do is you want to de-risk the acquisition. If you have one really
Hmm.
big customer, and that customer leaves, the buyer is going to be left holding the bag where the revenue
Right.
declines a lot. So most buyers are not going to want to, pay top valuation for a business like that. And
Hmm.
true or not, that being a risk for them to worry about. So the more you can diversify, I like how you said distribution, because that's also true. If you get all of your traffic or all of your customers from, say,
Right.
an app store or a third-party platform, that can be seen as risky. So the more you
Hmm.
can de-risk acquisition, the more buyers are going to be interested, the more you can sell the business for, like you did.
Right. The final learning that I would say is, um, so on the like legal structure front, one thing that is frustrating when you're, so a few people who want to buy the business wanted to use SBA loans to buy the business, because the interest rates are good and it's built for buying businesses. And so, the problem for our business was that we had multiple product lines under the same corporate entity, and therefore we were filing taxes every year as like a combination of all of our product
Mm,
lines. And
yeah.
then like the SBA always wants to see the tax filings, and that's all they care about. And so um, we couldn't get, or buyers couldn't get SBA loans, and they had to go after different kinds of business financing, which definitely made it tougher to sell. And when I started the other product lines, like I wasn't considering selling, but in hindsight, it would have been a lot easier to sell if they were separate entities.
Oh, 100%. So many
Hmm.
buyers are looking for financing. It's very
Right.
common when you're selling specifically profitable online businesses. And if you're
Hmm.
able to secure SBA financing, you broaden your buyer pool. But in
Right.
your case, it didn't matter. So you still found a buyer, luckily. But I
Right.
have seen some cases where all buyers can only purchase the business through third-party financing.
Hmm. Makes sense. Yeah, it's just I don't know. I When we were trying to shore up um the loan terms, I would imagine if you get pre-approved for an SBA loan, it's less risky that the terms would fall apart than, another business loan vendor.
Typically,
And
yeah,
so
because
yeah,
it's hard to get those loans. They're
right.
Yeah, because banks are very stringent with what they'll
Hmm.
finance, specifically for SaaS businesses. So it can be viewed as like a third party due diligence has been done on the business. So it gives buyers more confidence.
Hmm. Makes sense. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely nerve-wracking as you're going through the process of selling a business. Just every day you're like, I hope nothing horrible happens to my business today. It'll just like train wreck this whole thing. So just keeping the business operating while you're also dealing with this is always tough, but we ended up pulling it off. So
Yeah, you did it. You did it.
yeah.
Congrats again. Tell me this. Did you the acquisition closes, you have,
Hmm.
good amount of money wired to you. Did you celebrate anyway? Did you go out to
Uh,
dinner? Did you go on a vacation?
well, I haven't yet really. So I'm not gonna like, celebrate massively. I'm still doing the offboarding, so like every day I meet with the acquirer and go over whatever new docket tasks there are, but that will be ending for the most part this month. Um, but yeah, the day after the acquisition, I didn't do anything. And then that night, like I went to a concert in the park in Atlanta. The next day, I played tennis in the morning with a bunch of like stay-at-home moms for the most part who didn't
Nice.
have to go anywhere. But yeah, my wife is a doctor, so it's tough to find like time for us to travel, but we'll do the 3-day weekend at some point.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you that's all I got. Anything else you want to add? I'm just curious about what you're working on next.
Um, well, yeah, what I'm working on next, I've lived in New York City for the last 10 years, just moved to Atlanta in July. So I'm not really working on anything explicitly, but just trying to get a sense of the Atlanta tech startup scene, meeting a lot of people. There's an organization called Next Play, trying to help founders figure out what they want to do next. So I'm gonna start the Next Play chapter in Atlanta. Um, and yeah, I'm interviewing at like a few companies in Atlanta, but mostly just networking around. Probably not trying to start another business imminently, but in the future, I'm sure I will. It's just once you've gone through the whole cycle, you don't want to just like jump right in
Yeah.
immediately after.
Take a break. I
Um,
recommend it.
yeah, exactly. Taking a break. I'm doing some consulting. Legal stuff has always been interesting to me. Like I would love anyone who runs a business and sells a business would always want lawyers to be easier to work with, cheaper, all that sort of stuff. So I'm noodling on some things there, but I'm probably not going to start anything. Yeah.
Right on. Well, Harris, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, sharing your story. I enjoyed
hmm
it. If people want to, connect with you online, where can they find you?
Yeah, I Harris Osserman. If you Google, you'll find my LinkedIn, my Twitter. I also have been writing up some of the learnings from building talk hiring on my blog. So if they want to learn about that kind of stuff. But yeah, feel free to reach out. My email is also on my LinkedIn. It's my first name dot my last name at Gmail. So yeah, if you're intrigued or working on something cool, reach out.
Awesome. I'll put all that in the
Yeah.
show notes. Harris, thanks so
Okay.
much again.
Cool. Sounds good, Andrew.
See ya.